Good evening and welcome to Nerds at Night. I'm Kid Thunder DJ, and joining me as always
is Fire 47.
Hey, we got a pretty good show for you tonight. Of course, we say that every time, so it's probably crap, but thanks for listening anyway. And if you do like what we do or like to laugh at us or think you can do it better, like, share, subscribe on iTunes, Facebook.com/Nerds at Night, and ITE, Twitter @NerdsAtNight. Say whatever. Don't care. Helps us out in the end anyway, whether you like us or not.
Yep.
But anyway, a couple of topics for tonight's show we're going to get into real fast. I think we're going to start with this, though. So, I think I've mentioned in past shows that for the regular Walking Dead, and if I didn't, I got into it real hardcore the first season for a regular Walking Dead. Then the second season, I was like, oh, okay, this isn't bad. Third season, I was like, yeah, it's better than it was, but still not great. And then by the end of the third season, I was out.
Right, you got on it pretty quick, but burned out really fast as well. I got on when you started watching, or just before the second season started, I believe. And when that was just about to release, they did their first marathon. And when that happened, I really got into, or I watched through it and was getting really hooked into it. I've been following along since, and I can understand why some people have dropped out. I do get its repetitiveness and wishy-washy storytelling at best.
Yeah, and you could definitely tell that for The Walking Dead. The problem was you could tell where they kept changing showrunners there for a while, because they went from Belisarius to Erickson for a little while, then Nicotero for a little while, then I think it's somebody else. And I'm probably way wrong on the name, so correct me, but they did go through several showrunners, and each showrunner has a different vision of how the show should have went, and it was really playing out, especially with the season that introduced the governor. That was a mess for the first half.
Yeah. That was not the best.
Right. And I stated that to get to a few years ago, obviously. They've come out with Fear the Walking Dead.
Right, I think that was last year or the year before.
The dumbest title in history. But
yeah, I've heard worse.
The idea was, it's going to be everything that happens while Rick's in the coma, which, okay, they didn't technically lie to us, but we're pretty much in full-on world's over mode by 3 episodes in.
Oh, right, yeah. They skipped way past all the stuff that made this an interesting concept. They completely skip over in the first couple episodes.
Well, in the first episode alone, there's radio reports of the illness spreading.
Right.
The mysterious flu. What you get when you get bit, I guess, is the best way to describe it. And
the sheiks.
Yeah. So what really makes that suck is I would have rather done it where you don't see the first true case of someone being a zombie on the widespread where everyone knows they're there till maybe third, fourth episode of the second season. Because you could have taken a whole season to build the world, build these characters out like they're trying to do now and playing catch up on, have them know something's going on, maybe working with, change one character around, like the mom from that died at the end of the first season, Elizabeth or Liza or whatever her name was, have her be working, with the CDC already, and Nick's girlfriend could still have turned, but of course they're aware of this already happening, and it's all a big, everybody's on the hush-hush, and even when little outbursts happen, they're able to contain it and everything else. And it would have made all the stuff they did with the fake YouTube clips mean more and everything else. And then they could have went 90 miles an hour after the first season, because then we would have cared about all the characters more.
Right. I feel like we definitely needed more time to get invested in the characters, because even by now, mid-second season, I almost never remember the characters' names.
Yeah, I know.
As opposed to first season or the original Walking Dead, but I feel like a full season and a half, into the second season, to get to things would be a little too slow, to the point that people would just hate the show.
But you have to think
it's going so far in the other direction of drawing things out that
not for 6 episodes for a first season. So that puts them at 9 episodes.
Yeah, but then you got to figure the break that they're going to have between that and then everything else.
Yeah, but
I feel like it's just it has potential, but it's really finicky on if it takes too long to get there. they're gonna really like,
they're taking too long to get there now. All they needed to do was do what they're doing now at the beginning. I would have handled single character arc episodes early on if like they're doing now to help you flesh out who these people really are, because then we also would have gotten something we haven't gotten out of this show and definitely weren't going to get out of The Walking Dead, which is who were these people before everything went to hell?
Yeah.
Because that's the one thing they're always, saying in the promo material for this show is, can this family pull together and say, well, I didn't know anything about this family beforehand.
Right.
Other than the platitude spoon-fed stuff every show does, so...
And this, like, completely, like, this, like, branching family because of the various marriages that Madison's had.
No, she only seems to have had the one, but I get what you're saying.
Well, I mean, I shouldn't say marriages, but, like, the various people she's been with between her, not the ex, but like the one she had before.
Travis, her husband, and that's really all they've mentioned.
Well, yeah, Travis and her ex. The one I think they finally just started delving into that, where she's explaining to Strand that he died in some car wreck.
That was actually suicide. She tells Nick in Nick's flashback that it was an accident. You find out when she's sitting in the bar getting drunk with Strand that it was suicide. He killed himself, and they haven't.
Oh, was it that?
Yeah, they haven't gone into any reason why. But if you mix in the fact that he was quote unquote tired all the time, it seems like his dad was either battling his own opiate addiction, because you nod off, as they call it a lot, when you're on opiates like heroin and stuff, or you sleep. You know what I mean? And so who knows? I mean, sorry for that gap in there. Hopefully I've edited it out by the time you hear this. My mic almost fell over.
As far as like the addiction goes, that actually would be kind of an interesting thing if they discuss is if the father had any sort of past abuse, drug abuse issues or something similar, and maybe that's like where Nick initially got it from or something like that, and it kind of shows the father just not being able to work through it, and then we kind of maybe have to see if Nick can himself. Right,
because they're already teasing in the upcoming episode, which is episode 4. Pablo and Jessica is the name of the next episode. That they show him cutting out powder in a line. We already know one of the groups they're trading with is trading with them for drugs that are opiates because the sister of the leader is an addict.
Well, no, was she an addict? I thought it was she was just sickly and she needed actual...
No.
I thought she needed legit medicine.
No, you could tell that he was wanting the painkillers.
Oxycontin or something?
Yeah, and that's a painkiller, and that's also a good substitute for opiate addiction. So, no, they were... And that was all part of his diatribe that basically kept him from getting killed when he stole that cupcake.
Right, he was stealing that little cake for the girl at their place.
He knew she was an addict and that she was going to need the drugs, and they would just go somewhere else if he didn't help them. So, yeah. Even though it did put the camp in danger, he actually was pretty smart there. Now, we're going too in deep into the past, and obviously we've already given away a couple of spoilers if you haven't seen it. But we're going to talk about what might happen. They've already done the cardinal no-no of this kind of zombie thing, because there's always two types of zombie movies. You either have it supernatural, where you get bit, you're turning, nothing stops it.
Right.
They're unholy creatures. It's end times. You're dying. Or you have a scientific method. The problem with a scientific-based method is you have to stick by those rules. The problem with the God method is it seems like the same method, but those rules are a lot clearer. So you have to stick by them a little more stringently. Science, you can fudge around a little if you have good enough scientific explanation. They don't, but here's what I'm saying this. So far in The Walking Dead, everybody turns when they die, no matter how, which doesn't make sense scientifically. That does lean them on the supernatural side.
Well, I thought it was because of the bite, or the way they're explaining it at the very least, is the bite is so, like it gives you such a bad infection that it would kill you. And
yeah, but they never explain what about the bite makes you infected.
Well, you got to figure it's a rotting corpse.
Doesn't matter. Nothing about that should affect you.
You got to figure that all that shit that they've got on them and shit naturally getting into your bloodstream can't be good.
Well, but it would all be stuff we could treat. You can if I fed you tainted meat, which is at the end of the day what a rotting corpse is, I can cure you if I figure it out fast enough. And most of the time what's breaking down on a corpse is bacterial, which is even easier to kill than a virus. So their whole idea is, and if you go back to Jenner in the first series, he was saying, they don't know what it is and that it could be a virus or a parasite. So they've really fudged the lines between what it's supposed to be.
Right.
And the problem with that is when you're going to start mixing in this idea of a cure, because here's this guy who supposedly got bit and didn't turn, that they've introduced, and they even said in the promos for the next episode, he says it, or at least he appears to say it, because they're good. They're actually, I'll give them credit, they're really good at editing when they do their trailers. They're really good at not really giving you a clear answer.
Right.
But if that line in the next coming trailers to be believed, he's going to tell Nick, yes, I was bit and I waited for death and death never came and blah blah blah. But that poses a problem then, because that's throwing it firmly back in the side of science, because there is natural immunity.
Right.
And you can say there's natural immunity on a religious side, but that doesn't make sense, because typically natural immunity from something brought on by God means you're chosen. And I already don't like the fact that they portrayed just about every Mexican character in this show as being some kind of crazy zealot who automatically believes this has something to do with religion.
Yeah, that's been a really ham-fisted, or not even, I don't know if I'd say stereotype, but
No, it's a stereotype, because
just character type.
It's not as much of a thing
show
now because you've grown up in a more PC era, but when I was a kid, trust me, Jesus freak you. A lot of, especially in Mexico, Mexicans, where native Mexicans, I should say more properly, were definitely depicted as Jesus freaks in a lot of earlier works when I was a kid.
Right.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, they do it to themselves. If you watch, Spanish language television, there's a lot of stuff set in missions and things like that. But still, the fact remains, it's not right for them to just pin every character on that. The one character so far that doesn't act like it's a religious thing is the hotel person that Alicia found.
Right, the one that showed up in just this current episode. Well, there was him, and there was also Salazar, I think. He didn't really...
No, because he kind of went crazy spiritual at the end, too, when he's burning all of them. At the end of his current arc, where he's burning all of them, and they all turn back into regular people, and he keeps seeing Griselda and keeps talking about final resting places. They very subtly snuck him in under the religious wire at the end.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be some that's they have marks like that, but aren't as devoted, I suppose, as some of the other characters we've seen.
That's what I'm saying. They snuck him in under the line.
That's not such a bad thing, is I guess what I'm trying to get at.
Right.
Because having it in general is not a bad thing. It's when they're so...
It's when that's all they do.
When it's it's their only character trait.
Well,
yeah.
We're coming near the end of the time I set aside for this, so here's a couple of unanswered questions I've gotten. If you're listening and you have an answer or have a thought, please let us know on Facebook or something. Obviously, we already got into how are they going to explain the bite survivor, and if this is going to finally, for sure, say this is a scientific thing or a religion thing. Will any of the new hotel people they found wind up being part of the group? Because they're finally introducing compelling characters, and they keep disappearing. They introduced Alex through the web series and then through her 2-episode arc. Now, are we even going to see any of the boat people again, as I call them? That Jack character, is there going to be retaliation for that group's leader's brother getting killed by
Salazar?
By Salazar's people, and actually it wasn't by Salazar, it was by Chris.
Yeah,
Chris shot him in the face as he turned, and everything else. So that whole first part of the show for this season seems like it's not counting anymore. That it was just a placeholder to fill out episodes, and I really hope that's not the case. And I really hope that the hotel staff versus the wedding party family doesn't wind up just being a short-term arc to get them through the rest of the season till everyone can get back together. Because they would, the manager chick is really interesting.
Right. The thing they set up with her, with how she's locking the infected in rooms to save the rest of the hotel guests when it all breaks loose, was really interesting. Right.
And I like how I get how the family from the wedding party that survived is mad at her and feels like, she's responsible for their deaths. because, she did lock them in a room with a zombified family member
Right.
who had already, by the time she locked them in, bit one person. So that means inevitably there's going to be another.
Right. It was going to spread very quick. It was definitely not an easy decision. She even makes it clear that she regrets what she did.
And that's the other thing I like about this character and find her so compelling. She's still trying to survive, but she doesn't necessarily, agree with what she did. She just accepts she had to do it.
Right.
All right.
It's split-second decision, yeah.
Right. So let's go ahead and move on from Fear the Walking Dead. This is longer than I think I've talked about any Walking Dead thing in a while. So let's move on to more fun things. I'm a huge Rick and Morty fan.
Yes, we are.
Yes, we both are. And I was, perusing around online, and I found that they're developing a co-op board game based on one of the episodes of Rick and Morty, the Total Recall episode. Now, for those who don't watch the show, you should. And, pause this, go to Hulu, watch an episode, especially this episode, but Total Recall, but even if not, any episode.
The first episode's really good, so even that's just fun.
Right. Pause it, or, watch it, then come back to us and unpause us and listen, because it is out there. And it's out there in the best way possible, because it's a great show. And it's a very thoughtful show. They're really good at continuity. There are long-term effects to actions. Things get called back all the time. So, anyway, that's enough stroking. There you go. Just watch the show. There's an episode called Total Recall. The basic premise is space parasites who invade themselves in your memories to spawn more invade the house. And all these goofy characters come up that all claim to know the Smith family and everything else. So Rick locks the house down until they can figure out who's all real. And hilarity ensues.
Definitely.
Well, they've based a cooperative card game on this, which is an interesting premise in and of itself. So you have this card game and everything that goes along with it. So it should be real interesting to see, because it's, obviously there's some kind of mechanic in there where it's going to randomize who's a real character and who is a parasite. And I really want to see that, because it is a cooperative game, but they claim there's no table captain issues, which I hope there's not. Because I've played competitive or cooperative games before, and you get the one dick who thinks he's in charge, and it ruins everything. It says it's easy to learn. Some of the zaniest and wackiest characters from the episode.
Hidden rules.
Yeah, hidden rules, because those guys love to mess with reality. It is available on Amazon. The price I'm looking at for the Cryptozoic Entertainment is $32.95. I will be investing in that on payday, because it looks like a lot of fun. And speaking of card games, one of the reasons why I want to bring this up is we're actually in a pretty good period for those right now. There's been a lot of great ones, like if you follow Cyanide and Happiness, and you've ever played around with the random comic generator, one of my favorites coming up that I'm waiting for, that I actually backed as a Kickstarter backer, is their Joking Hazard card game.
Right. I remember seeing a little bit of that. That looked like a lot of fun.
Right.
You set down random stills of of their comics, and you choose the best lineup, right?
Well, the way it was explained in the rules is whoever's turn it is overturns one card from the deck. That's the first panel. Then the decision maker plays one card to be the middle panel. And then everybody submits a card to be the final panel, because it's a 3-panel comic you're making.
Right.
And then the best punchline, which is the third card, wins.
Okay, that's right. Now I remember.
All right.
Yeah. That looked like a lot of fun. I want to throw on another one that I know of that recently was made. I guess you could, the company Rooster Teeth. They recently created a board game themselves, or not board game, but card game.
It's going to be a Rooster Teeth thing.
Because he's Dustin.
Anyway, a big queer for them.
Anyway, I'm sure you'd actually really like it if you actually watched them. Anyway, they have a YouTube series they call $1 Million But, where it's basically almost like a little drinking game. You sit there, pose like you get $1 million, but X scenario, and it's usually something really outrageous and wacky, and they'll end up actually like acting out or taping, those scenarios of like what if, of these what if scenarios.
It's almost like, it sounds almost like it's Would You Rather, but for
kind of
a positive starting situation.
And like you're throwing in the buffer of like you'd get $1 million for doing this, and they turn that into a card game where kind of like in a similar vein of both Joking Hazard and obviously Cards Against Humanity. you have your starting card and your punch lines.
Nice.
And looking at some of the way it's played out, they've already done a couple episodes that they've actually used some of the card examples to do them, and it looks like it was a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. And it definitely sounds like it'd be one worth checking out, and maybe we'll pick that one up as well.
Yeah.
I just wanted to throw that out there. So go ahead and leave us a comment on what you guys think are the best card games or even epic board games out there. And don't just say Cards Against Humanity. Yes, it's fun. Yes, we have a lot of fun playing it, but there's better out there.
That's lived its time.
Yeah, there are way better out there. Another good one for me is Boss Monster, especially if you're a fan of retro games. Check that one out.
Oh, yeah, I love their box art.
Yeah. Anyway, so let's before we get out of games here, September 25th, we have the next Toyman Toy Show for those of you local to the St. Louis area. It's going to be at the Machinist Building in Bridgeton, Missouri. You can look up toymanshow.com, find all the details there. I'll put it in the description for this episode. Go ahead and check it out. Outside of us, there's a lot of great vendors, just about anything retro, toys, games, movies, comics, magazines, posters, models. I mean, there's a whole artist alley, so if you want to find original art that's very geek-inspired, definitely worth checking out. Again, I'll put the website and the Facebook page in the description for this episode so you guys can check it out. We've got a lot of great stuff for this show to the point where I really felt like sharing it.
Right.
I just recently got back from one of our friends who's an excellent electronics repair guy. We're going to now have a fully working, restored Sega Master System complete in box. And when I say complete in box, it's got the paperwork, it's got the light gun for it, 2 controllers, all of which have been tested, working, and refurbished. So they should be good to go.
Right, that one was a little bit tricky because didn't we get it in and it wasn't working?
Right, and that's a very interesting thing. It turns out that whereas other controllers have leads that go all the way up to the control press down point, this didn't. There was kind of a metal ring where the controller leads would eventually touch the board at, and that's what would touch all of the appropriate contacts. So if you pressed up, it would be up, down, it would be down. That ring was starting to deteriorate.
That's no fun.
So we had to remove it and do something to replace it and basically redo those routes so that the controller would know what button you were pressing, because when we got it in, up and down weren't working on either controller.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, but we got it fixed, and we've tested it with both, and everything's great. So that's definitely going to be a highlight piece there. Speaking
of controllers, we also got a copy of Arkanoid for NES along with a working controller for it.
Right, you may think Arkanoid, if you even remember the game, it was kind of a pretty cool, but pretty standard.
Breakout.
Yeah, breakout, brick breaker. You have the paddle running across the bottom, and you can move back and forth. Well, standard Nintendo controllers weren't pressure sensitive. Over to the left or to the right was the same speed no matter how hard you pressed it. The Arkanoid controller had an analog knob. So much like the arcade, if you could get that knob moving fast enough, you could fly back and forth. And once we got it hooked up and tested, it definitely was an improvement. And that's an extremely hard to find controller because most of them just got pitched because that's the only game it would work for. Right. Wouldn't even work for other type of similar games. So
kind of surprised it didn't do anything similar like Mario, where you just hold down B as you're moving to speed yourself up a bit.
That would have been too confusing, I think.
I don't think so. You already have that again with Mario, where you do that to run faster. But
yeah, it wasn't their game too, so you have to think about that and anything to make a game more unique. Getting into a little bit newer systems, here's a couple of interesting things. I've gotten a bunch of new Sega games in. Also, for the Super Nintendo side, I managed to get a complete in-box copy of Zombies Ate My Neighbors, which is a always popular game. Gets requested a lot for that system.
Yeah, that's classic.
And for the Genesis one, we're going to be doing that as a Let's Play here in a few weeks, once I get through doing Grand Kingdom and a few others that are ahead of it in line. So yeah, also some 70s and 80s eras comics, a lot of the 400s in the Batman Detective Stories line, and some other similar ones from Action Comics and World's Finest from that time. So they're not in great condition, but for $1 or $2 a book, they're great to be filler-ins in your collection until you can get better copies. So definitely worth checking out. Another great find for the Nintendo fans, another couple of ones that I'm always asked about, got 2 copies of Double Dragon 3.
Oh, wow, 2?
Yeah. Kirby. Yep. A complete in box Super Mario Brothers Black Label, which is the standalone version where most people get the Mario Brothers Duck Hunt, and the original arcade style Mario Brothers where you're doing that pipe side to side game.
Right, hitting the power block and stuff.
Yep.
I remember that being like a side attached game for my Game Boy Advance copy of Mario 2.
Right, and
I played that one a lot.
And in the original Mario Brothers 3, it was a bonus competitive game you could play if you found this little icon in a spot where over an already beaten level the last time, your other player. So if you're Mario and you switches to Luigi, the last spot you were on as Mario would have a little icon on it. And if I went over there and clicked on it, we'd go in and battle, and I could steal your cards if you had any from beating a level. And if that finished out my card set, I'd get the mushroom bonus for it, which sounded really more complicated than it was. It was actually really cool and a fun way to piss off family.
Okay, thinking about it now, I was trying to process what that meant in my head. It makes sense.
Yep. So it should be a good toy show. We'll be there along with guys from Toys of Our Youth. That's Mark and Dakota. I know he just bought a huge collection, so if we don't have what you're looking for in Nintendo games especially, go down and see him. He's also your hookup for Funko Pops, all kinds of great collectibles. Really the man for it. And he does a regular flea market in Granite City every weekend for Toys of Our Youth. So
wasn't that Route 66?
Yeah, the Route 66 flea market. So he's got a lot of stuff, and he's got a lot of easy access. So definitely go and check Mark out if we don't have what you need.
Is Catman coming down too?
Yeah, Catman Toys and Games. We don't talk about them. They support dog. No, I'm kidding. Charles, if you hear this, I'm kidding. Yeah, they're going to be there too. He does a lot more newer games, a lot of collectibles. He also brings a lot of classic car models that he recently picked up.
Right, he got those into his
and
collection.
Those have a charity kickback attached to them. I'm not 100% sure on what the breakdown is, but I know at least 25% of the sales on those goes to Alzheimer's research. That's where he got it from, was his dad passing away from Alzheimer's. So definitely check him out if you're into classic model cars.
Or just want to support the cause.
Right. All right, so let's move on from the toy show, September 25th at the Machinist Building in Bridgeton, right off the 270 in St. Charles Rock Road. Come by and see us, and tell if you heard about it on the podcast. Let us know. We'd really want to. It's really hard to actually track how many of you listen. I can see how many download, which ain't a lot, but it's kind of cool to see how many of you actually listen to our goofy asses every week.
Yep.
Anyway, before I move on, something interesting happened. Now, I haven't followed the Comedy Central roasts in years because they've really degraded down into just being vulgar, more so than they should be or need to be for what they're doing. And it's just sad, really, anymore.
And Coulter, if you're here.
Well, okay, you just heard part of it. So, way to give up the lead. But no, Ann Coulter was on the roast for Rob Lowe, which she's gone on record as saying she only did because she had a book to promote. Blah, 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 blah. That's why most people who you wonder, hey, how does this person have, how does person A have a connection to person B? It's usually not. It's a promotional appearance. So she was on there, and she got just beat down. And we're actually going to play a couple of the jokes. And I just want you to think about this, Brandon. I just want you to answer if this is too much. I mean, don't get me wrong. A little background, because I know you may not know Ann Coulter as well. You're not a political guy like I am. She's a conservative commentator is what they call her. Richard Belzer famously said on Real Time with Bill Maher, she's a fascist party doll. I tend to agree with Belzer more. But anyway, her interesting notes in life is she's actually fairly good friends with Bill Maher, who's a staunch liberal. She's blindly supported Bush, and now she's blindly supporting Trump. So she definitely seems more of a true party doll than an actual thinking member of a party. But that's my opinion, and that's my opinion as a normally liberal-oriented person, even though I used to be a Republican. So, saying all that, giving a background on her, and yes, she said inflammatory things in her time. I just want you to hear a couple of these and let me know if you think it's gone too far. I think it's funny, but I want to hear what your opinion is.
Here, who's scaring the crows away from our crops? Last Last year we had Martha Stewart, who sells sheets, and now we have Ann Coulter, who cuts eye holes in them.
Looks like she's having a good time. I haven't seen you laugh this hard since Trayvon Martin got shot.
And Coulter is here, which can mean only one thing.
If you can see on her screen, her face is just getting more and more angry.
First of all, as a feminist, I can't support everything that's being said up here tonight. But as somebody that hates Ann Coulter, I'm delighted.
Ann Coulter is one of the most repugnant, hateful, hatchet-faced bitches alive. But it's not too late to change, Ann. You could kill yourself.
Ann Coulter has written 11 books, 12 if you count Mein Kampf.
Ann Coulter looks so much like a truck stop transvestite whore that I saw Jeff Ross run to an ATM just before the show.
Ann hopes the Republicans can hold on to the House so she can continue to haunt it. She seems stiff and conservative, but Ann gets wild in the sheets. Just ask the Klan.
Ann's against gay marriage. What's your thinking on that? If I can't get a husband, they shouldn't either?
It's 56 days to Halloween, but I see that Ann Coulter's already in her skeleton costume.
Is Pete white? Is he black? Ann Coulter needs to know so she can decide if she hates him.
Why is Ann Coulter here tonight? Answer? Because the Right to Lifers wanted everyone to see what an abortion looks like up close.
I just realized that I am not the only athlete up here tonight. As you all know, earlier this year, Ann Coulter won the Kentucky Derby.
And you know, Ann, after seeing your set tonight, I think we've all witnessed the first bombing that you can't blame on a Muslim.
Wow.
Yeah. They really tore into her, which, again, I'm kind of proud of as someone who doesn't like her, but, you know.
I mean, yeah, some of those were getting, like, a little heavy-handed, like, just the straight-up just, like, normal insults, like, not even, like, jokes.
Yeah.
But, yeah, you know, I mean, I'm certainly not someone that would ever in my life support Trump, especially after some of the things, you know, he's been doing during his campaign. But, you know, yeah, some of this, I'll admit, was getting a little heavy-handed, but, you know, hey. If you support Trump, you kind of deserve what you get, I guess.
Right.
In some regards.
Well, I mean, she's supported the conservative politics for her whole career and is quite nuts for it. But anyway, I just wanted to bring that up because, A, it's making news, and it's making news in the pop culture world as much as it is the regular news in the political world. So I felt it was appropriate to at least give it a little bit of talk. So, yeah, we're actually running fairly far ahead of schedule this week, which is good. Let's go ahead and close out on my favorite subject, wrestling.
There we go.
Because, you know, it's still not quite into the good part of the year for video game releases. So there's a new Madden out, I think. I don't even remember. I don't care. It's football. As much as you know, non-wrestling fans want to bag on me for being interested in wrestling games every year, it's like, yeah, but here's the thing. A new football player signs, all they've got to do is put lettering on the back of a jersey and upload a new picture. And half the time they don't even have to do that in a Madden game. They'll usually just have, you know, the black outline picture if they can't get a picture in time. So there's no real surprise there if a new star isn't there or their stats aren't right. Nowadays, they send you a new roster update every 5 minutes. So it's like, you know, a guy has a bad game and his stats are corrected. In wrestling games, there's so much work that goes into putting them into one. It is a kind of a really cool thing to see, hey, did this guy make it in time? You know, they made a big star out of this guy. Is he in? No. Nakamura just missed the cut for 2K16 apparently. You know,
17. But yeah.
Or no. He's in 17. He's a pre-order bonus. That's why I pre-ordered.
That was just the that's
Balor, and Balor's been in the last game. Balor missed it for 15, so it was, you know, real cool to see. So again, and that's just me ranting a little bit. Nothing really good in video games out yet, but they're coming. So we'll get back into a more heavy-handed video game discussion.
Just before we head right into wrestling, on the topic of gaming, I do want to make up the quick mention that, you know, today we did get the announcement of the PlayStation 4 Pro, which is the updated PS4, the codenamed PS4 Neo.
Yep.
That is now the PlayStation 4 Pro, which is coming out early November 10th for $400, which not a bad price.
Not really, because that's the one with native 4K, right?
I believe so, yeah.
That's worth it alone, because that would
4K and HDR.
Cool.
High def, or not, I can't remember the exact.
Well, it should be in your list there.
Of HDR, but
It's his first day for show prep, guys.
No, I thought I saw it in this list before. But anyway, story short, it expands on like the colors that the thing can render into a very like larger list.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that has to do with that. Same with the 4K. 4K is about resolution, then HDR is about color, and when you can bring those two things together, you can do a lot more detailed things, which has been one of the big complaints in the HD world, is that sometimes you have so much area, and that picture is taken in such a huge area, you can't really scale that area down to zoom in because you lose definition. 4K fixes that problem. Supposedly you could zoom in on, a certain area of the screen and maintain the resolution and the clarity all the way down to that level, almost like it's magnifying it, is how it was explained to me when I was, or what I had understand from what I had read when I was looking to buy one. And that's going to be real interesting for these new PlayStation models. Do you have any other information?
Just the thing was a high dynamic range as far as HDR.
Yeah.
Along with that, they did announce a PlayStation Slim model, which is going to become the new standard PlayStation model that you'll be able to buy. That comes out in about a week's time, actually, on September 15th for $300.
That makes sense. If you don't have need for all the fancy higher end stuff, and you want to get into the PS4 finally, that's a great. We're about due for that first price drop remodel, because that's really where we go now. It's not really that they're going to drop prices on the system. They're just going to put out a new version of the system for a cheaper price once they've gotten the hardware set. So that's cool.
Right.
Thanks for the information on that.
Even on the normal one, they're actually just doing a good update to allow more support for 4K, which is really nice.
That's good.
So they're not segregating the market. They're not splitting things where you're going to have exclusives for the one thing or for the new model that's coming out.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be equal, but some are just going to look better, essentially.
Fair enough. All right, so moving along. Actually, before we get to wrestling, I did have another little topic here. I wasn't sure I wanted to talk about it, but could be kind of interesting. Is I was looking around at some of the games in my collection to try to think of, hey, what do we want to do going forward, for a play? And I look at all these great Marvel games from that era, and then I try to think, well, what was the last great Marvel game in the new era? And it was like, well, it's, the Marvel Legends or whatever they had eventually called it, Ultimate Alliance and all that. But even then, they really weren't great. They were just better than what we had gotten. And I'm wondering, is, DC, for better or worse, has the Arkham series.
Right, that's certainly holding them down.
Right, so I'm like, can they do...
I should say holding them up. That's a better way to put it.
Can they do an Arkham-style game for Marvel? I mean, I just don't think that world supports it.
Maybe not Arkham, essentially, or like.
Well, okay, maybe not that dark, gritty, detective-y style,
right,
but I mean that kind of epic adventure centered around one character. That's the other difference.
I mean, like so far, like looking at it, it looks like the Spider-Man game they're working on and have been working on is getting a lot of like traction and hype going behind it. That has a good open world city and fast-paced movement to move around it, like with his web swinging. With that, they could do something pretty similar to the Arkham series as far as like matching, like not the tone but so much as the quality of it. If they put the effort in, and it seems like they might be, this could be a really good new move for Marvel.
Well, we'll have to wait and see. That's just a question I was wondering, and if you guys out there think you have an answer for if this is the savior for Marvel or if there's a way to do it, let us know.
You can see a screenshot there from the Sony conference.
Oh, I saw it. I mean, that was where I was going with this, and that's a good one. Personally, I think the best games that Marvel had came out in the Genesis era, and they were the games like Maximum Carnage, and Punisher was actually a lot more fun than people give it credit for being, especially on arcade. Home console version wasn't as great, but the arcade version was excellent.
And of course, there's classic Marvel vs. Capcom, but
that's a little bit different. That's a fighting game.
That's a crossover series, but still has Marvel.
I mean, anything's better than Superman 64 or Wolverine Animanium Rage or whatever. X-Men 2 Clone Wars is also a really good one as well. I love the whole cold opening where you're just given a mutant and have to break into a base.
Right.
All right. So let's go ahead and wrap up tonight's show. We'll talk a little bit about wrestling. It was kind of back. We're kind of getting out of the pay-per-view role, so it's a little bit more of a standard couple of weeks, even with pay-per-views coming up. They're single show pay-per-views. They're not big fours, so they're definitely can tell it's down into business as usual. Now, a couple things, though, I didn't like, and we're being worried about what this is going to mean for the people involved. First of all, Triple H swerving both Reigns and Rollins to basically crown Kevin Owens the Universal Champion.
Right.
And then in this week's show, he's literally having to butt in a promo between Stephanie McMahon and Seth Rollins to be like, oh, yeah, by the way, I'm your new champion and I'm here. I really don't think this is a smart move. I think they've all but said, yeah, this guy's just holding the belt until we can put Seth over one-on-one,
right,
not as a baby face, so that we'll get that bigger pop.
Right.
Did you see that?
Yeah, I remember watching a little bit of that interaction with Steph and the rest of them. I forgot that, again, I don't follow it quite as heavily, so I was kind of surprised to see that they have Mick Foley as general manager. That's always kind of fun.
Yeah, that whole angle was, that was another thing. Is like, well, I get to make the matches. I'm like, okay, well, if Steph's the commissioner, by wrestling logic, that's who makes the matches. They're the matchmaker for a company. So you've just made her unnecessary. And
well, she is unnecessary.
Well, yes, but it's just this whole thing has been a mess, and it was just a way to keep McMahon's on TV so they could continue whatever they wanted the authority angle to evolve into, and it's not working. And I really hope they just move it down to just being Foley and Daniel Bryan running their respective shows. We'll have to see. Now,
right.
Speaking of Rollins turning face, I know so many fans were happy for this. I know the IWC creamed their pants. The Internet Wrestling community, for those who don't know.
Yeah.
Way, way, way not the right thing to do to turn him face.
How so?
Because look who's your top heel now. It's Kevin Owens, who I love. Love Kevin Steen. But it's easier to make... Okay, it's not easier, but it's better to make a new top babyface than to take a top heel, turn them face, and try to play catch-up with a heel.
Right.
Because everything Seth Rollins had going for him as a heel still kind of works for him as a face. Same for any heel, especially in this day and age. And which is why it doesn't work, because this is, they do it all the time. Every time a babyface goes down, boom, they'll just turn a heel. I'm like, yes, it's a little more work, but building a lower level face up to that level gives you that face for the long haul, which is always good to have. It's always good to have one or two top faces more than you need, because they can kind of go down for a little while on the card, and then boom, they're a big win right back up. Because
right.
Fan support lasts. Fans have a long memory about guys they like. When you're just flip-flopping between this guy's a face and then he's going to be a heel again as soon as the baby face he was supposed to work with is back, you just don't get invested in the booking.
Yeah, I get that.
And I have a feeling that's what's going to happen here. Rollins is going to be a face right up until the first Raw after Balor's back, and then that's it.
Balor will take back over.
Yeah, and that's not good, because then if Balor exits again or whatever, they don't have that guy they made. And then they try to flip Rollins again, and he looks like the Big Show, who flips almost literally every year of his career.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, What Culture actually, that was the number one thing in their top 10 things they don't want you to remember is, 20 healer face turns in a 21-year career, of which he took 1 year off.
Jesus Christ.
Right. So, it's like, I hate this schizophrenic, reactive booking, because it shows the flaws in their booking logic, and it's bitten them so many times now, I think they're just used to getting bit. And when they're used to getting bit, they'll just do it anyway, because, it does work for the casual fan, but how are the casual fans going to become long-term fans if they can't, when the last time they turn on their TV, Rollins is a heel, they skip a few Raws, come back to check on it, oh my God, he's a babyface again? Why am I supposed to be cheering for him?
Right.
And I know you have that same problem with a guy you build up from the ground up, but at least you keep one thing consistent. So that casual fan can come back, oh yeah, it's Rollins and he's still a bad guy, but hey, he was an entertaining bad guy. Oh look, who's this new guy that he's fighting against? There's that one thing they can latch on to.
Right.
You took that away for a cheap babyface pop and an easier road for short-term booking. But
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And again, fans, if you're listening, if I'm wrong, leave comments, message us if you want to keep the conversation going about this topic. Because I am anxious to hear what the other members of the internet wrestling community think, because I know Rollins is such a darling for that group, and he deserves it, but I just kind of want to see what people think. And here's the thing. Last thing, I put it down as something to think about. What are they going to do with the cruiserweights when they actually get to the main roster? You have the Cruiserweight Classic wrapping up on the network. They've already announced that there's going to be 10 for Raw. A lot of backstage news that if this takes off, they're going to do a whole Cruiserweight division on SmackDown. It's just, some of the big guys that are in this thing, aren't ready for a main roster spot. They really need time to learn WWE style. Highlighting you for 10 minutes every other week in this Cruiserweight Classic is one thing. Having you have to appear on camera, at least a couple of weeks a month in wrestling and non-wrestling roles in the regular show is a lot different. And there's already a couple NXT guys who are in this thing, one of whom, Gargano, is looking to be in this thing, which means he's on the main roster. Do they float him back and forth, or do they break up everything they got going with that storyline with Tommaso? So I really hope they figure out what's next. Do you have any thoughts on what you would do?
I'm not too involved on it, so honestly, not really.
I know. I threw that out there just to
get me to talk.
Yes. Or it was going to turn into me ranting for the next 10 minutes, and we really need to get out of here. So, again, I think that's it for tonight's show. If you have any questions, comments, again, if you have anything you want to add about the wrestling topics especially, go ahead and leave us a comment, like, share, subscribe here and on YouTube. And as always, for Nerds Night Gaming, I'm Kid Thunder DJ.
And Fire 47.
And we will see you next time.
Good night.